What if heaven was worse than hell? What if there was an elixir of eternal life? What if the gods that lived in said heaven feasted on the souls of humans? These questions and many others are asked and answered in a manga and anime series called Hell's Paradise by Yuji Kaku. The series recently wrapped up season 1, with season 2 confirmed to be in the works, and I was anime only for the first season, but after the hooks the series left in me, I bought all of the manga and read all 127 chapters in the course of 3 days, and I have a lot of thoughts I want to share. But before I do so, here's a spoiler warning for all of Hell's Paradise. To truly do this series justice, I have to get into major spoilers. So if you're anime only, or if you haven't read all of the manga, then I suggest you click off this video and save it for a later date. I also want to give a content warning for this video and series. This series is rated M for mature, and as a result, has a lot of gore and booba. Like, a lot. Of course, scenes will be censored so Papa YouTube doesn't strike me down, but if you're not of age, then wait to read this when you're older, even though you're probably not going to listen to me. But with that stuff out of the way, join me as we take a look at Hell's Paradise. In the first section of the video, I want to dive into the themes I noticed in the series, starting with a theme of balance. Balance is arguably the biggest theme in this series, as it's explored through the concept of Tao in characters like Sagari and Gabimaru. Tao is what allows our protagonists and antagonists to perform supernatural acts and defeat supernatural enemies. Tao is explained as the life force that lives in every living and non-living thing. Think of it like the Force from Star Wars. Some people are born with large Tao, while others have small Tao. Tao can also be categorized by 5 elements: water, earth, wood, metal, and fire. Each element has its own strengths and weaknesses. For example, water has the advantage over fire, but earth has the advantage over water. Tao can also be grown through training and achieving a perfect balance of weakness and strength, yin and yang, if you will. The Tensen, the main antagonists of the series, train their Tao through 5 means: exercise, meditation, breathing, the study of organs, and sex, with the last one being the method most shown in the series. But there's also another way to channel one's Tao, as shown with Gabimaru and Sagari. You see, both characters are on opposite sides of the Tao spectrum and have their own challenges to achieve this ultimate balance. Gabimaru is strong, but he lacks weakness. The shinobi training he was put through removed his emotions, or at least that's what he thought. He thought he needed to be hollow to be a great warrior, but his wife, Yui, and Sagari helped him find the weakness within himself that he thought was dead and buried. A detachment to his wife, the emotions, that weakness, allows him to channel his Tao to new heights yet to be explored. Sagari has the opposite problem. She has the weakness, the emotions, the compassion, but she lacks the strength. It's only through her adventure with Gabimaru that she learns to channel her strength and anger without letting it overwhelm her compassion, finding the middle ground she sought at the beginning of the series. The next theme I want to discuss is choosing your own path, as we see with Gabimaru, Sagari, and Senta. Gabimaru was born to be a shinobi and was forced to be the ultimate soldier, but thanks to his emotional attachment to his wife, he strives for the peaceful life that is unknown to them in the village, and that goal is what helps him during his adventure on the island. Sagari wishes to be an executioner like her father and give criminals a painless death, as she has witnessed from her father's executions. But during this era, women were homemakers, and any woman who didn't conform to what was expected was looked down upon by their superiors and society as a whole. But Sagari doesn't let this discrimination stop her from achieving her goal, and her determination earns her the respect of people like Genji and Shugen. By the end of the story, she manages to achieve said goal. I also lumped Senta into this theme, but unfortunately, he didn't get to choose his own path. Due to pressure from his family to continue the tradition of serving the Yamada clan, he ultimately gave up his passion for art. He hated killing. He hated the toll it carried on one's soul, but there was no other option in his eyes. He couldn't choose his path and died in a line of work he despised. But he didn't die in discomfort, but in the memories he had for his artwork, dying with a smile on his face in the arms of someone he admired. Sort of coinciding with the theme of choosing your own path is the theme of change. I would say that all of the characters who survive the final act experience some sort of change. Gabimaru changed from a man with no emotion, a man who was hollow, to a man who embraced his weakness and his feelings. Sagari learned to channel her strength and anger while not getting rid of her compassion. Yuzuriha only cared for her well-being in the beginning of the story, constantly lying and running to save her own skin, only to be willing to sacrifice herself to take down the Tenzin, even if her death was a fake-out. Chobe was unwilling to team up with anyone aside from his brother, but when their backs are up against the wall, he adapts to the situation and teams up with his enemies, even if he believes that he's just manipulating them. Toma starts off relying on his brother to make the decisions for him, but eventually evolves into someone who can stand on their own, making it so he no longer has to rely on his brother to come to his aid. Fuchi went from someone who sought death for his research to wanting to prevent it after mourning the loss of Senta, and this feeling allowed him to save Gentetsu. Gentetsu changed from someone who sought violence and wanted to die with his name in the history books to someone who wanted to live and help others through medicine, just as Fuchi did. Shion and Nurugai's progression ties into the next theme that I wanted to talk about. That theme is the 5 stages of grief as explored with these characters after the loss of Tenza. The first stage is denial, which both characters experience in different ways. Shion was willing to put himself on the line to save Tenza, not wanting to lose his pupil, but at the request of Tenza, he grabbed Nurugai and ran. Nurugai protests this act, believing they should go back and try to save Tenza despite his wishes. Stage 2 is anger, which can be summarized by the anger they hold towards Zujin and their plan to avenge Tenza. We see Shion go through bargaining and depression during his second fight with Zujin, saying, "Why did I have to make the right choice? Foolish or not, I couldn't bring myself to comfort him as he met his demise. Oh, the regrets he surely held. What awful agony racked him as he passed from this world, while all I could do was flee, unforgivable. Even as I lost a loved one before my eyes, I made the right choice. How unforgivable. These eyes cannot shed tears, so in lieu of that, this is what I can do." This regret he holds for letting his people sacrifice themselves to save him weighs heavily on him, ultimately leading to him making a similar sort of sacrifice. But with the help of Nurugai, he learns that Tenza died smiling with no regrets, allowing Shion to accept the loss of his pupil and move on to protect Nurugai. In the second section of this video, I want to get into color theory as it pertains to the characters. And this thought train isn't some sort of conspiracy I developed like Pepe Silva, but actually extends from a comment made about Sagari's outfit. In the dividers for the earlier chapters of Hell's Paradise, the author did fashion reviews for our main characters. Some are serious and some are not, and in Sagari's fashion review, the mangaka points out how the white clothing is meant for mourning the deceased. This comment made me research color theory and how it was used for other characters. So let's go back to Sagari for a moment. We know that white is associated with mourning and peacefulness, but what about red? Red is associated with sacrifice and anger, which reinforces her character progression. She has a lot of compassion but not a lot of anger at the beginning of the series, but eventually finds the balance between those emotions. What about Gabimaru? His outfit is primarily black with white accents. Black is associated with power and strength, and we know that white is compassion. So similar to Sagari, this color scheme reflects his Tao. He has great strength but little weakness at the beginning of the series, but eventually finds the balance between those opposing forces. Then there's Yuzuriha, who wears purple. At first glance, the meaning of purple doesn't seem to fit her until you realize that it symbolizes mystery, vigilance, and immaturity. Mystery can refer to how she constantly lies, either to protect herself or keep her true origins hidden. Vigilance can refer to how she constantly seeks a way out of dangerous situations, like fighting the Tenzin or wanting to leave the island as soon as possible. Immaturity can refer to her carefree spirit, which Senta admires about her. Chobe wears primarily red and black. Red symbolizes his aggression, confidence, and strength. Meanwhile, black represents his protective nature towards Toma, his intimidation against others like the Doshi, and the dominance he exudes since he is the self-proclaimed king of bandits. Gentetsu wears green and tan. Green is known to represent materialism, which could correlate to his greedy nature, constantly wanting to beat the monsters himself, instill the glory, and put his name in the history books. Meanwhile, tan represents the strength he has, but also his boastful nature, believing he could have defeated the Tenzin or Doshi without help. Lastly, Nurugai wears brown, which represents her honesty, the comfort she gives to others, and her support for Shion. You can say that some of these are leaps in logic, and I'll admit that some correlations are shaky at best, like Gentetsu's, but I do believe some of my points remain true. In this third section of the video, I want to get into two types of storytelling. Writers typically fall into two categories: the planner, who plans out pretty much everything with very little leeway. Examples of this are Vinland Saga and Berserk. Then there's a planter, who sort of just throws ideas out there and sees which ones sprout. Examples of this are Promised Neverland and One Punch Man, and I think Hell's Paradise falls into the latter category. In multiple volumes, the mangaka talks about how they're able to draw whatever they want with no restrictions. This type of creative freedom is very rare in the creative writing space. Eventually, the editors will want something changed, but that didn't happen with this series. That sort of unshackled creativity allowed for some wacky ideas that sprouted out of this series. I do think some aspects were probably planned, like the beginning and end goals, but the centerpiece feels like it was created as it went on. Some ideas felt brilliant, while others made me question where those plot threads were going. But ultimately, I think the freedom Yuji had for their story made Hell's Paradise feel unique, and is an experience I won't forget anytime soon. In this last section of the video, I just want to give my overall thoughts on the series. I thoroughly enjoyed Hell's Paradise. The freedom that was given to the mangaka allowed for some of the wackiest ideas I've seen in manga. The themes of balance, change, and loss are executed really well, and even if you're not looking for the themes within the series, it still offers a fun action fest. I do think that Elemental Tau does overcomplicate an already great power system, but I believe that was mainly so we could get some interesting matchups during the penultimate fight, and as much praise as I'm giving the series, I do think some twists thrown in the penultimate fight made me think, where is this going? It didn't detract from my enjoyment too much, but it definitely got knocked down by one point. The characters are also fantastic. There were some characters like Gentetsu that I didn't enjoy at first, but as the series progressed, they grew on me, and that made their eventual fate, whatever that might be, feel more impactful. The artwork is also fantastic, although some fight scenes were hard for me to follow. Ultimately, I think Hell's Paradise is an amazing story that not everyone will love, but those who do really enjoy it. And I think Yuji Kaku and the rest of the team should be proud of what they did. I'm bad at not crediting everyone who works on the series, as it really does take a team to make something like this. So here are all of their names on screen. Know that if you're watching this somehow, I really appreciate the effort you put into the series. If I had to give this series a rating, it would be a 9 out of 10. I rarely give 10 out of 10s, and maybe this series deserves it, but for me personally, this series is close to perfection, but not quite there. If you watch this video and anything has piqued your interest, then I suggest you check it out. I definitely recommend it. Hey peeps, I want to thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this video, as I had a lot of fun working on it. Be sure to let me know your thoughts on Hell's Paradise in the comments below. I know that not everyone will love this series, but I certainly do, and I'm curious to see what Yuji Kaku will do in the future. Subscribe for more content like this, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Goodbye.